Friends, loved ones, fellow weirdos. Happy new moon. Big moon, weird moon, heavy moon, excited moon. But happy new moon in Pisces. That may go against some things we have read. Because I've also read like 0 degrees in Aries. But I feel like maybe that's like the the fault with so much information and not enough time to digest. I do try and get my information from as scientific of a source as I can. And from that, it's in Pisces, homie. In the very last bit until it jumps like a little rocket into Aries later on the following day. And the following day, we'll also have some fun with it as well. The new moon in Pisces will also be with Neptune and Saturn. And Saturn moving out of Aquarius into Pisces it's been there for a long motherfucking time. Okay, let's take this one place at a time. The idealism of Neptune, I feel like, is a lot of dream stuff, which I brought up last time, but also just in mentality, and you'll see what I mean about that in a second. Pluto enters Aquarius, and yes, that is out of a definitive system, with it leaving Capricorn, and the very, I guess, definitive boundaries that sign has been so clear on. However, I don't necessarily think that is the fall of, I mean, it is, it's not necessarily like, oh, everything's gonna, suddenly fall to pieces and be replaced by something else, but it also is. It also is just maybe, not exactly the way that you thought that it would look. I don't necessarily think that it lends much of itself to what Venus is doing. I think it maybe stresses it out more. I feel like with the Venus and Uranus and Taurus, there's an aspect of this that feels something like a purge on top of all of this. Like, there's very much the energetic quality of a new paradigm, truly. And that is a lot like water breaking and before the new, and that is a purge to some extent, and a sort of overwhelm of emotion or memory, and that kind of goes back to idealism and mentality and cycles. And I think will be perhaps uncomfortable, not easy, but can have ease. Ease doesn't necessarily mean easy, but it does mean that there's comfort and relief despite the uncomfortable and the lack of relieving. I do think that will allow, especially as the moon jumps in with Mercury, will allow a synthesis of the mind and the heart to prepare for everything that will come after this new moon. And what seeds will be sown. And I mean that, again, in the mentality context. When we're given the opportunity to idealize, we are also given the opportunity to sort of walk through that door of identity. Open this window up of opportunity. And that can be very literal, but it also is very much something that exists in the mind, and something that exists in your perception of reality. So be very careful what you think. And be mindful of where those thoughts lead should you become it. And those ultimately are desperate projections of reality, of validation seeking, I suppose, of ego pleasing. I do think that will lead a lot of people to a faulty sense of spirit, and we see that already with the way people turn to religion and the way that their religion has also imposed itself on laws and boundaries and definitions of. That's bad medicine and is desperation and incompetence by the name of religion, and is not the root of what it is that we aim to experience in this transition to a new sense of self and a new world and a new mode of opportunity and mode of dealing. I think Pluto and Mars being conjunct is a vulnerable place to be, and Mars is also going to leave Gemini and enter Cancer, which is an interesting and vulnerable place to be. But it is a time that does not have to be weak because it is vulnerable. Strength is also vulnerable in its own right, and being vulnerable requires a lot of strength. And so I think in that testing we will find ourselves tested with both being asked to create this or step into this new creation of self, or this ideal self, while also recognizing that the ideal self exists because of the shadows, and that can take you to some deep places too. Again, I think Saturn finally moving out of Aquarius and Pluto moving into something entirely new are going to challenge a lot of ideas of success and a lot of ideas of habits, and I think challenge and question what is on repeat. And I mean that in a very literal sense, in like the songs that you listen to the most and the messages that you hear, but also in the habits that you've made, be in thought cycles or in the ways that you move, because ultimately those are affirming reality. And that goes for a lot of what you say too. And I am learning that in my own right. But as cheesy as they can be, it is in affirmations in the way that the world uses them are very much ways to affirm your reality sensorily and in your brain in many ways, because you are processing sound. You are processing the vibration of all of those things. And even if you are just to think them, your brain is still processing that. So again, the idealism of your mentality is going to be a very important piece of this puzzle. I do feel like the way that everything's lining up is a lot more like it's giving me like mechanistic, I don't know if that's actually a word, like machinery, like a mechanism aligning. Like, how when you're trying to crack, those old school locker codes, and you can kind of hear when shit aligns. I do feel like that's exactly what is going on, and that will open up a new door if we let it. Well, it'll open up a new door regardless. What you do with it is an entirely different thing. Let's see. I don't know what else. I think equinoxes are generally a building plane, and so very literally, as the seasons change and the axes in which these planets align are offering us a different law, or offering us a different earth and grounding, or offering us a different perspective, or offering us a chance to remember. I pulled some cards for myself the other day, actually, and something that came up was to consider the value of your descent now and what that means, because it may not look or sound exactly like it has in the past. And to also consider in, again, those Pluto Mars and all that shit, and the, you know, testing of Saturn finally moving out of Aquarius, because now this is, I think, going to be more questions than answers. As Pluto enters Aquarius and as Saturn enters a different paradigm in itself, entering Pisces as well, will be deeper application of research and more questions than answers, and again, more challenges and more challenged effort in the ideas of success. But again, pay attention to the patterns and the cycles and the affirming quality of those patterns and those cycles, because careful what you think, should you become it. And because of that, consider all of the growth and all of the new and all of the green and where your heart is teeming, because that only creates more pathways to a mind, body, mind, heart, gut connection. It's like if you don't use those circuits, eventually they kind of burn out, you know, or like you don't use anything for a long time, it's going to get dust in its circuits and its sockets. So keep those fluid, lest you let something else synthesize with you and for you. And that is not where we want to be. With all of that being said, we're going to pull some cards with one of my new favorite decks, because it is just constantly calling, and why not? And it matches me today. We're all black and white, because nothing is. Because literally nothing is. Oh, I'm into it. However, I feel like it was an accident. I mean, there are no accidents, but it'll come up again. That's all. If it must, if it must. Okay, I like that. Whew, all right. Much like we are hanging out here and there at the same time. And like there are cards in between us, we will do 3 deep breaths together to tap into and channel all of the waves of this interesting moon and all that surrounds it, and see what it can't say to us. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Interesting. I feel very itchy. Oof. I feel very itchy, and I also was twitchy. Hear me out. A resistance to create, or fear of creation, while also a stinging expectation for action. Those two things are not in a line. It's like I need to do this, I need to do this, I want to do this, I wanted to do this, but all of this fear of creation and all of this fear of whether or not it's going to happen, fear of failure, fear of, not cutting it, fear of, fucking it up, whatever it is. And I can relate for sure. I have lots of ideas that I want to draw or paint or whatever. And I've understood over the years that there is absolutely a fear of fucking it up, a fear of ruining something that you almost haven't even started. But it's easy to say, just redefine failure, blah, 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 blah. However, ultimately, yes. The ideas that we have of failure or success are an inversion of what they actually are. They've been colonized and a key point of capitalization, of capitalism and capitalizing on desire, etc., etc., etc. And it became more of a way to contain creation rather than express it. And when you sort of, like, you don't have to like hardcore decolonize, but like spend some effort with yourself trying to figure out what is that misaligning, why is it you do these things, what is it you've sought from them, what is it that you gain from them, what does it feel, what do you feel like you're losing? And if it feels like you're losing a lot now, what was the time when you felt like you were winning, or you felt like you were rewarded for your effort? And how do you recreate that feeling? It doesn't have to be the same situation or anything, but go back to that feeling, and if anything, that's motivation to continue that feeling rather than a fear of not finding that feeling again. If that makes sense. Yeah, it came out anyway. Nine of Pentacles, Five of Pentacles, Ace of Swords, Page of Wands. The Page of Wands came out earlier anyway, and I knew it would come back up. And it's the bottom of the deck. So, mood, zeitgeist, etc. The interesting thing about this page, it's more about its luminosity. It's a luminary, this character. I saw a lot of air, and I saw a lot of every other element, really, which transpires from fire, is not absent of fire. Fire helped create all of this. So that, rage, anger, pain, all of those things, all of that action going on in Aries, that is looking for expression, is not looking for expression outright, and fire is looking for expression synthesized with the other elements. The Page of Wands is protecting and exhilarating. There's an aspect to this that I think is more about speaking to the flame than it is about the flame itself. And that is absolutely cultivating and conjuring with the flame, with desire, with thought, with, which is, again, in those difficult times, in a time like a purge or the fear of new, or any of the heaviness that's going on, is finding more stability and uplifting the place between all of that friction. Yeah, there's just a lot more action for air here than you would think, based on just a Wands card. And that is also like looking even into, you know, more traditional pages of Wands. There is an aspect of air carrying this growth of this character as well. He's more grounded in the Wand and expansive in thought than he is, you know, burning with fire or like raging with fire. He's understanding the flame. And again, to understand the flame is to understand the light, is to understand, you know, the luminosity and the clarity of that. And sometimes that is the light to see the wound clearly. That is very interesting. I do also feel like there's a movement in this card, specifically now, that is more like a cyclone or like tornado, like quick change. And I think that is, again, kind of leaning to this air element, and again, kind of leaning to these transformational elements and these new portals, because it's the colors of this is going to make like this strange prism. And ultimately that's where those two things mix. And again, we get back to the synthesis of your mind and your heart, and where, you know, Venus is ultimately kicking ass and like finding its jam. But we are up against a lot of, not have to be, but we are dealing with a lot of heavy, fiery, catapulting energy. And rather than this new moon being like saturated in water from Pisces, I feel like it's gonna feel more like gasoline. Yeah. Okay. 9 of Pentacles, 5 of Pentacles, Ace of Swords. This is why the sword is here. The sword is lent to this Page of Wands. That's why there's so much air in this quality. And so much structure and so much balance. It's not even desire reined in. It's very much desire displayed. It's taught magnificent things. This card and we're going to talk. And the Ace of Swords, whenever it comes up, is very much a conduit of information. And it is a clear channel of passage for that information. It's like an extension cord. You know, like you are here and the outlet is there, and you have all of this information and you have all of this source information, and you need to get from point A to point B. How do we connect those things? And it is, again, remember where you have felt that connection before, and don't try to replicate that, but do like reinvigorate that potentiality in your mental sphere for that moment. Because the heavy feelings can feel very constricting. It can get a very tight butthole, and we want to expand, for lack of better metaphor. The 5 of Pentacles that precedes this, I think, is more about walking away and leading away than it is about being pushed out. I think it can be a difficult card, and it can have moments of not necessarily feeling like you have enough or like you are safe or any of those things. It's out of bounds from the 4, maybe, where you do feel protected and like you have sort of this shielding energy around you, a safe energy. But funny thing about this card is I do think that there's trust here, and I do think that there are elements of being watched or looked after or looked over, and maybe just trusting in that and what that can create. And again, I think that deals with the mental atmosphere of being able to creatively idealize what that kind of safety looks like, outside of bounds of safety, outside of the box, if you will. And the choice to be able to see those things, because journeys like this can often be quite scary with its level of unsureness. And I don't think it has to be, because I think a bigger message in this card is that there is grace structuring itself around those moments as well. And ultimately, like, I talk a lot about faith, but I also talk a lot of shit about religions. And I think that's because the two are very different. And religion is structured around having faith in something other than yourself and your heart and your intention. And that pulls you farther away from it. And ideally, when you can have faith in yourself, you can begin to create that structure around you and outside of you, because it comes from within. So it's almost antithetical to turn to religion for that, or turn to any organized religion for it, or any false prophet, really, or any one leader, really. And again, consider the value of your descent. What are you walking away from, and why? And what, rather than looking at that as a punishment, what is the reward? And how will you continue to reward yourself? Because the Ace of Swords, though it can be about battle, and there's so much in the world that is going on, perhaps it is reminding us not about the battle, but about, what did I say? The offering, or something like that. Not about a battle, but about the something that I said earlier. I'm going to have to rewatch that and remind myself. I lose my track of thought often in this. I mean, it's not about the battle, but about the owner, but about many things. I'll find that word. It'll happen in my brain. And it's already been said. I just can't go back in time and put it there. The Nine of Pentacles being the start of this. Ooh, you know, it was inverted initially, and is the only card that showed up inverted initially. And I think that that is very true for the fact that sometimes as these transitions happen, we often begin to redoubt ourselves, or question what it is, how far we've come, or what it is that we've done, and what have you. So the inversion is almost like, I feel like seeing your pentacles like spill out like fucking Sonic, like getting hit on something. But ultimately, the fact that it's here in the first place, the fact that it's here as the first card that fell out, or that is in this order, in this line, is that there's a level of stability that we can have tangibly, if we understand that it is possible to have now. Too often, I think, do we get caught up in these, like, what am I going to manifest? Like, oh, I have to do this ritual, and like, blah, 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 blah. And what do I want from this moon? And da, 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 da. And like, that's the thing too, is like, prayer isn't about asking and wantonness. Prayer is like this love song to the world. And when you exist already in that emotion, then it's not about having to have that granted, for it is already granted. And so it just is. That is the craft, and that is conjuring. And so I think this is sort of finding ease and like repose in that wantonness, and finding more stability in what is had and what has happened. And maybe that's just memory and remembrance, and maybe that's also just gratitude for the little things and for the things that have carried you this far, be it ideas or, you know, people or places or things. In fact, all of them. Touch on every element, why don't you? And reignite that fire. And maybe that's exactly how we reverse sort of order of operations. This thing is finding definite or like tangible gratitude and all of those things, reminding you that the fire is burning so hot, reminding you that these things are they already are. They already are. There's nothing more to want. There's nothing more to need other than truth and trust in yourself. And all of that is already had. It's just about remembering. And even if you are on a new journey to life, or new life, or spiritual life, or spiritual path, or path to joy, or path to healing, or whatever it is, a big part of that is remembering that at heart you are not all of the negative things that you thought you were. And that's not to say that like we aren't capable of evil, but in our like molecular conception, we are both dark and we are both light, and we in the womb are both male and female, and in our minds we are both infinite and also very confined physically, and all of these like major micro macro sides to it, and understanding that beyond all of the things that you think you lack or that you doubt of yourself, you were good and whole from jump. And that is then a natural truth. And I think that the ways that we live or that we move through the world are ultimately the things that sort of cope over that and help us and aid us to forget, in that we are simply a reflection of the stars, simply a part of the flow of energy of the world, a part of the frequency of the universal mind, which is a pretty fucking nice thing when you recognize it, because there's lots of beauty around there, and there's also lots of fucked up shit, so it can be easy to get caught in all of the layers of the fucked up and forget that at heart you are the heat of God, or whatever it is that you believe in. You are the fire of Agni. You are love and purity. You are, and therefore you are the law in and of itself. My gosh, that's a big one. That's a big one. Okay. Ooh, you know what I will also say about this Nine of Pentacles is it's not about wanting more. It's not about abundance meaning more. It's not about prosperity meaning more. It is about creating with what you have. And that is expansion that will add up to more. But an expansion of gratitude, an expansion of what is. It's like when you have one plant and you just propagate, and then you make all these plants. You didn't need more. You didn't need to aspire to more. You just needed to see this resource for all that it is capable of. And she is straight chilling with a plenty. This is not an energy of needing more or wanting more or manifesting more or wishing for more, demanding more. No. Nope. This page of fucking wands is a badass. I just want to say that there's an element of protecting the fire from water, and there's an element of moving mountains, which will bring you closer to the air. And that is, again, an idea of thought, because it's not something that's necessarily in the card, but it is something that I'm seeing in the card. And it is a story, like an elevated story. And I think it's a protection of that idea again. So this page of wands is like kind of my favorite right now. Kind of my favorite. So posture. For wands being such an active card too, like there's really so much stillness, and so much stability to uphold rather than to do. And I think that's in the way we both connect to ourselves, and the way that we connect to our shadows and ideas of ourselves, or perceptions of ourselves, or maybe the way that other people see us, perhaps. Okay. Ote! Once again, like we were chilling together here and there at the same time. We wouldn't have breathed together. I don't know why that came out funny. And we'll take 3 deep breaths, tapping into further literal steps of this space that the moon is conjuring in. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Well, that was really interesting. Whew, okay. All right. Okay. I will say, first off, this makes perfect sense. We got 2 3s out of 3 3s. That will make a full circuit. And it is idea versus perception and projection. And that is very much also very connected to the first idea with like the compulsion to create, or the expectation to create, and the fear of creation. Because this sent all of that energy into like my hips more so, rather than any tingling or twitching or whatever there. It sent it straight to my hips. which I want to say is the seven of wands. So rather than overwhelm, rather than it being like the grass is greener on the other side, or there's all these things to do, or blah, 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 blah. Again, find more joy and more exhilaration in like repose and just enjoyment for the sake of it, I suppose. Rather than needing more, sometimes it's nice to just window shop, or, you know, again, you consider the things that it is that you want, and that it is that you need, and what it is that you want to look like, and what it is that you want to build with, all of these things. But the Seven of Wands can feel like we have all of these things going on and distracting and pulling us and wanting us, you know, almost like, but when you're out of the element of something or it doesn't even have to be someone. It can 100% be something, because the ideas of the way that the world wants us to thrive in and of itself is its own entity, even though it is a quote-unquote it, or just an idea, and we can't necessarily personify all of these things that we shop for or whatever. This is the idea of stepping away from that, inverting it on its head. Again, not being consumed with desire and wantingness for sake of more. So don't be disappointed when your manifestations don't come through because you were fucking around on the wrong fucking moon. But more so about just joy and just exploration and just curiosity and just like fun, and like this is more about the fashion montage than it is about what she's going home with, I suppose. Is a fair way to put that visual to it. I do think there's a piece of this that wants me to relay that sometimes when we find ourselves riddled with this more and thinking that is our idea of fun, it's a way of compensating for some sort of grief or pain, or a way of masking some sort of grief or pain. Whether that be small scale, just masking because you're uncomfortable, or large scale, I mean, that's not small scale, that's pretty fucking large scale, or other scale masking because you're dealing with some shit, with some more shit, or because you're suddenly triggered by childhood trauma again that you thought you dealt with, or whatever it was. That can that can, you know, retail therapy. But again, how is it that what are these habits and what are these cycles? And is it overshadowing work that needs to be done, or is it not upholding with strength a vulnerable space for another aspect of you that requires some time and some attention and some love? Sometimes we use things to heal us because it's easier than doing the mental or spiritual work, or it's easier than sitting with that feeling. And sometimes it's easy to get pushed into that direction because it's kind of the direction that the world always wants to push us. And then that brings me back to these threes, because this Three of Diamonds is very much, again, those cycles and those habits, and what are you affirming your reality with? And if that is with some curiosity, you will never be disappointed, and you will not find failure. You will find life, and life may have hardship, but that is not failure. And that is more expansive and more about growth, and you don't have to wish for more because you will just have and attract more. However, conversely, in the same place, this character can get consumed with more, and how much more they don't have, and how much more this person has, and how much more there is to watch, and how much more there is to do, and how much that can be quite debilitating. The Three of Hearts is where this starts. The Three of Hearts is where this starts. And I think this says more about the ways that we've broken our own hearts than anybody else. And I think at some point we're going to have to understand that that's what we're choosing to create with. And once we understand that, is that what we want to choose to create with? It's like a Three of emotional wands. And again, ties back to, you know, the synthesis of the mind and the heart that I talked about in the beginning, over and over again, and the ways that we feed our reality, very literally, painfully so, and the ways in which we remember those experiences, and remembering maybe before those experiences, what was it like to love before your heart was ever broken? What was it like to do many things before somebody or something or some system or some idea sowed doubt? And again, easy to say, but any spring equinox is always about the seeds that we will sow. And sometimes when you just want more, you plant good seeds in rotten soil. And sometimes when you know you have everything it is that you need, you end up with more than you thought you would have. And that's very much an element of inner faith that I think this card needs. Perhaps if they would just watch this reading, I'm kidding. But perhaps if they understood those cycles in their mind, they would not be sawing through, trying to cut out. Granted, again, like I said, we're going through a purge, and it does feel like we're cutting out some shit. It does feel like we're cutting dead limbs. It does feel like we're painfully purging. But is that pain because you're escaping the sadness, or is that pain because it's a necessary product of clearing, or a necessary symptom of clearing, I suppose? And I say that because the King of Swords is here, and I think he beckons that we all know maybe a little bit more than we're giving ourselves credit for. And sometimes that's what this is too, is it's very validating in what you've already understood for yourself and in your heart, because our natural connections to ourselves are there to help and not disappoint us. And I think this King of Swords is very much ready to take this on with us and feel everything. And I think he will speak very true to that, and rather than be ruled by a mind clouded with society's woes and nonsense, the King of Swords is very much filling his mind with where his heart is, and speaking his heart because of that. Very in line and creating lines and blazing a path, clearing a path. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Let's see what the bar takes us to. between this world and the next, my dear. I'm just dropping all these cards today. Queen of Swords. Interesting. So we have the King of Swords, we have an Ace of Swords, we have the Queen of Swords, and now we also have the Judgment, which is a solid 20. So this is also already a process that has been happening. This isn't anything new. And this is a process that is already happening, and entering into it with wants and needs and demands is unheard. Is not what this momentum is about. This moon is about about intentions then and energies that have led up to this point, and the way that we will speak truth to them as they fall out, and that will be between a bridge between old self and new self, a bridge between your young self and your adult self or future self, a bridge between your pain and your pleasure, a bridge between your understanding and your misunderstanding, a bridge between the living and the dead. Absolutely. And I think having the King and the Queen of Swords and the Ace of Swords is, again, a reminder that this is not the time to be begging for abundance, but the time to understand that you have ripeness in your soul, and that will be plenty. Pluto is here too. Damn. Okay. Party on. Thank you, crows and circus and numbers of zombies. Yeah, I will let you play with that and chew on that and sift on that and spend some time in reverence and in repose, and also not just tonight or just on the night of a full moon or new moon, but on many nights after, on nights following, on nights preceding even, because it will happen fast, but things will unfold. And in that time, again, careful what you think, should you become it in your projections of reality. And rather than project, find competence here. All right, cool. Party on. That's all I got for you. Be safe. Happy full moon. New moon. Happy new moon upon us. And until next time, when I feel like ranting about weird things going on in the stars. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for making it this far, if you did. Thank you for listening, and thank you for wanting to grow and learn in your mind and in your heart and in your spirit. And for that, I am eternally grateful. Party on.